Hi, everybody. Welcome to Hot Mike. I'm your co-host, Bill Whittle. Hot Mike is recovering from a pretty nasty cut he got on the nose. He was working a homicide case on the north side of downtown Los Angeles. I tried to warn him, but he wouldn't listen to me. But that's Chinatown, Mike. That's Chinatown. Anyway, education-based entertainment here at the beginning of the week for you as we continue our series called A Counter-Revolution of Competence. This time it is Pam Bondi versus Merrick, Garland, and the single most important appointee that Donald Trump has named, because this is the most important position in his administration by far. The Department of Defense, Department of State, all of these pale in comparison in terms of the problems we have today compared to the head of the Justice Department, because this is the situation we find ourselves in as we enter 2025. Now, Barack Obama and the Marxists who, let's just say, advise him, figured this out back in 2008. They may have had their sights on it earlier, but we began to see it as Obama was sworn in January of 2009. What they realized was that if you can control the Justice Department, you don't even need to control the media. In other words, in a healthy republic, the job of the media, the news media, is to investigate corruption and wrongdoing on the part of elected officials, among others. And when wrongdoing and lawbreaking can be found, then the evidence provided by the media is then handed off to the Justice Department, and the Justice Department prosecutes the crime. But the Marxists who've been trying to take over this government for the last 12, 15 years, 20 years almost, really, I guess, realized that if you controlled the Justice Department, it didn't matter whether you were guilty of a crime or not. It didn't matter whether you were caught or not. It didn't matter whether there was evidence or a pile of evidence or not. They realized that you could do anything you wanted to, break whatever laws, including murdering somebody in their prison cell during a small break when the surveillance TV cameras malfunctioned. What was it for Jeffrey Epstein? A little 13-minute window there? Get away with literal murder. And nobody will do anything if you control the Justice Department. So, Eric Holder, who called himself Barack Obama's wingman, Loretta Lynch, and now, of course, Merrick Garland, determine whether or not lawbreakers will be punished. And furthermore, not only do they have the ability and an inclination, I might add, to not punish high-level Democratic lawbreakers, but they also have the ability to launch investigations into people who may not have broken any laws. Now, some of you may have seen the series I did for Daily Wire called An Empire of Terror, where I talked about the various leaders of the Soviet police state and the nightmare that ensued that killed 20 million of their own people, and Leninism killed another 100 million or so around the whole world. But one of Stalin's later police chiefs, the last one with any teeth anyway, was Lavrentiy Beria, maybe the worst person that ever lived. Certainly he's in the top 5. You can see top spot from where Beria is standing. And it was Beria who allegedly said, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime." In other words, if you weaponize a Justice Department, it is no longer responsible for trying to find out who committed a crime. Now the job of the Justice Department is to find what crime this person may have committed. That's a profound difference. And if you don't see it, then you probably need a little bit of help, because there's not a single person among us who probably hasn't committed 34 felonies if you let the standards fall to the level that they fell against with Donald Trump. So you get the idea. If you want to recover the country, you have to have the rule of law. And the destruction of the rule of law is responsible for all of the problems that we see, including the border crisis and all the rest of it. I mean, think about it. Think about all the times you've seen people lying their asses off in Congress. 2 senators, two House of Representative members who are launching inquiries into government misconduct. How many times have you seen them say, "Well, I don't recall," or "Let me circle back to you on that, Senator," or "I'll have my office get back to you with that information when I'm not under oath," and all the rest of this stuff? How many times have you seen this and just said, "My God, will you stop lying?" Well, what are you going to do about it? You could hold them in contempt of Congress. But if nobody's going to press the charges, if the charges are not going to be brought because there's nobody in the Justice Department interested in justice, then you've got yourself a real problem. So it goes to everything. Criminalizing the local terrorist organization known as Antifa. That's going to be a job for the Attorney General and a brand new Justice Department. You know, you have to enforce election integrity laws. You have to enforce those laws. You don't have to just put the laws in place. Most of them are already in place. You have to enforce them. That's going to require an Attorney General with some guts and some background and some love of the country. You know, you even have a chance with an Attorney General to release the data on what actually happened to Jeffrey Epstein, who was on the client list, you know, all of the details that went on behind the January 6th witch hunt. All of this is dependent upon the Attorney General of the United States and the Department of Justice. So this is the most important appointment that Donald Trump could possibly make. And the main reason, the real reason, aside from the benefit of good old-fashioned justice in itself, the main function of enforcing the law against very high-level criminals is it tends to deter criminal activity in the future. If people who say, well, we have no business, you know, revenge is not a motivation. Well, okay, put revenge aside. Think of it as deterrence. Think of it as saying, if you recover the Justice Department and you are ready to enforce the law, no matter who you are, no matter how high up you are in the social hierarchy, then you might actually have a republic again, and wouldn't that be nice? So today we're going to take a look not only at the incoming nominee, we're also going to take a look at the incumbent. Let's start with the incumbent, which in this particular case would be Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland is a graduate of the Harvard Law School, and like Barack Obama, he was editor of the Harvard Law Review, although unlike Obama, presumably Merrick Garland wrote some law reviews while he was editor of the Harvard Law Review. I never cease to be amazed by the fact that Barack Obama was the editor of the Harvard Law Review and never wrote a law review. I don't know why more people aren't more interested in that than I am. Now, prior to becoming involved with the government, Garland's private practice was not in law enforcement, but rather corporate litigation, and he returned to Harvard as a lecturer on antitrust law, which is real different than putting people in prison. During the Clinton administration, Garland became Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, and he was involved in a small number of high-visibility terrorism cases, such as the Oklahoma City bombing, Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, and the Atlanta Olympics bombing. In 2016, he was nominated to the Supreme Court by Barack Obama in order to replace the beloved Antonin Scalia, and my God, what a swap that would have been. But Republicans didn't hold hearings for Garland. I think he went 290-some days without hearings being held because it was an election year. Fortunately for America, Trump won that election in 2016, and Garland was never confirmed, and that seat went to Neil Gorsuch. Joe Biden announced him as his pick for Attorney General in January of 2021, and he was confirmed by a vote of 70-30. In 2024, he was held in contempt of Congress by the House of Representatives for defying subpoenas and withholding audio evidence with regard to Joe Biden's possession of classified documents found at the Biden residence. Now, as Attorney General, Garland sued the state of Georgia after it passed the Election Integrity Act of 2021, claiming that voter ID requirements targeted Black Americans. I don't know if he ever really fully explained that either to my satisfaction or to the satisfaction of Black Americans, all of whom seem to have IDs and who seem to be quite offended at the idea that they don't. As America's premier law enforcement officer, he's consistently sided against law enforcement, launching DOJ investigations against the Minneapolis Police Department, the Louisville Metro Police Department, the Phoenix Police Department, the Mount Vernon Police Department. He authorized the appointment of a special counsel which has prosecuted and detained citizens arrested during the January 6, 2021 demonstrations in Washington, D.C., and, of course, in November of 2022, he appointed Jack Smith to begin the lawfare attacks against Donald Trump regarding his role in the events of January 6th. Smith has recently dropped election subversion charges and improper use of classified document charges just a few days before we record this. So in summary, he's a graduate of Harvard Law School, but in corporate law primarily, not really a prosecutorial background. He doesn't seem to have the moral tenacity that really excellent prosecutors seem to have. By all accounts, he's a rather affable fellow, and I'm not entirely sure that I want an affable fellow to be Attorney General, especially at a time like this, especially given the background of his sort of obedience to the deep state. He's been pro-environmentalist, anti-law enforcement as a general rule. And, of course, he appointed the special counsel to raid Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence looking for improper use of classified documents on the part of Donald Trump. But he was at the same time held in contempt of Congress for defying subpoenas regarding the improper use of classified documents when it comes to Joe Biden. So if anybody wants to accuse Donald Trump's appointee of partisanship, then they're going to have a little bit of explaining to do. So now on to 0047's Bondi Girl. And putting aside the cheap clickbait title, Pam Bondi is a force to be reckoned with. Merrick Garland is a lawyer, primarily. Pamela Jo Bondi is a prosecutor. Now, as we've said many times, Merrick Garland graduated from Harvard Law School, which is, okay. But Bondi graduated with a degree in criminology from the one institution that produces the finest minds on the planet, and that would be the University of Florida. Go Gators. She obtained her Doctor of Jurisprudence degree from Stetson University in 1990. She served as a prosecutor in Hillsborough County before becoming Florida's first Attorney General in 2010, partially due to the strong support of 2008 Republican vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin. Now, unlike the man she will be replacing, Bondi is good in front of the camera, having made several appearances on Fox News and having once hosted The Five Show on Fox for 3 days in a row. Now, as Florida's Attorney General, Pam Bondi led an unsuccessful attempt to overturn the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, that would be Obamacare. Florida joined 26 other states in declaring that legislation unconstitutional, but their efforts to prove that in a court of law were, as I said, unsuccessful. Pam Bondi was selected by Donald Trump for her 8 years of going after both drug and human traffickers in the nation's third most populous state. But without a doubt, the quality that Donald Trump prizes most in Pam Bondi is, of course, her loyalty. Pam Bondi was one of the attorneys who defended Trump during his first impeachment trial and has been a vocal and effective advocate of Donald Trump ever since. So, in a nutshell, I suppose you could say that Pam Bondi is essentially Kamala Harris, only competent, likable, sharp, well-spoken, and authentic. Her 8-year tenure as Attorney General for the state of Florida has given her far more prosecutorial experience than Merrick Garland could ever have claimed to have had. But her chief asset going forward is going to be that she is 100% intellectually, morally, ethically, and even spiritually on board with the MAGA movement, which is nothing more and nothing less than the effort to return the government of the United States of America to the people that own it in the first place. She is going to be facing monumental resistance in this regard. Monumental. We don't have the faintest idea here in early December of 2024, the kind of resistance that she is going to be met. But combined with incoming FBI Director Kash Patel, the era of weaponizing the government of the United States against the people of the United States of America has a very, very serious chance of coming to a long, long overdue end.